Hey everybody, this is the Aspire Atlantis. Of course, if you've been around over the last couple weeks, I'm sure you have seen the Aspire Atlantis. People are just going crazy over this thing, and for good reason. It's a great little tank. It's priced right. The rebuildable heads are generally very consistent and of good quality, but one of the drawbacks is that this uses a ceramic wicking material, which I just dropped into my keyboard. Let me go ahead and grab it here. This ceramic wicking material, according to some people over on Reddit, they're having issues with it. In other words, under certain conditions, it's actually flaking off. It's flying through the drip tip into their airways and causing discomfort. And we don't really know how safe this actually is. So there was an interest expressed in rebuilding these heads. Now, one of the benefits that we have, of course, is the Atlantis heads are substantially larger than the much smaller Nautilus heads. And the Nautilus heads have always been something that I've struggled rebuilding. Not so with the Atlantis heads, because what we're doing is we're not actually rebuilding them, we're just replacing the wicking material. And you can do this probably 10 or 15 times. On this particular head, I've replaced the wicking material 6 times. I've had it for about 3 weeks now. And it's working like a champ. So let's go ahead and take a look at exactly what this entails, and hopefully you'll be able to start using your Japanese cotton sheets inside these wonderful little Nautilus heads. Or excuse me. Man, this gets me every time. Atlantis heads. Let's bring it down to the desk. Okay. So here are our stock Atlantis heads. And I'm going to go ahead and take this screen. This screen will pop right out. So I'm going to stick a little screwdriver in there. And I'm going to pop the screen right out. You do want to save that. That's actually your spit back protection. And as you can see, this coil is a little bit gunked up. I've been using this for about a week and a half. Plenty of tanks of juice have gone through that. Now here is your center pin. Okay. So you're simply going to take a screwdriver or some sort of a little driver and very gently pull that pin out. And as you can see, when we pulled that pin out, you can see that one of the leads was trapped against the inside of this rubber grommet. Now the grommet needs to come out. For this, I'm just going to use a pair of pliers, or you can use a pair of tweezers. Try to be careful because this is a soft material. It's almost like a rubber material. And make sure you're not actually grabbing the wire from the coil. And I'm simply going to try to pull this out. There we go. All right. And we're going to keep that rubber grommet because we need that to actually isolate one of the leads against the outside. So you're going to have one touching the outside of this head and one touching the center pin, which we already removed. Now the easiest way to slide this out is with some sort of a large diameter rod or with a screwdriver. I don't have the screwdriver I used before handy, but the easiest way to get these out is to push them from the bottom. So I'm going to try to find this tool. What did I do with it? I believe this will work. So I'm going to take this, and from the bottom, I'm going to push towards the top. And this whole coil assembly should come loose. Now this wire is hooked on the edge. I'm going to push that down and then push out. And now our coil is popped free. Now if you look, there is the ceramic material on the inside, and there is also an outer wrapper that slips in. And this is the most difficult piece to get back into place. But we're going to go ahead and remove that for now. So now we have a simple sleeve. If we take a look at our actual coil section here, you can peel these halves apart. And there's definitely some burning on the inside. The taste was beginning to degrade quite a bit. And this is actually, it peels off in layers, and as you can see, there's a portion that's actually singed there, and it flakes off fairly easily. So not necessarily great stuff. You see how that's coming apart in pieces, almost like it's falling off where it was burned by the coil. So people are saying that that's coming up through the central air hole. If we look at our coil section, and boy is this stuck on there good, you'll see that the cotton is tucked, or the ceramic is tucked underneath one of the leads. Again, if you're familiar with Nautilus coils, this will seem very familiar to you. Now, if we zoom in the focus, you'll be able to see that only a certain section of the wire is charred. That is because this coil uses both resistance and non-resistant wires. So this is a welded two-piece wire, similar to what was used in things like the Odysseus and the Penelope of Golden Greek fame. So obviously this wire needs to be cleaned off. The way I do that is with a blowtorch. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and then come back and continue with the tutorial here. You could also just heat it over an open flame until the coil is clean, but somehow you have to get that gunk off of there. Now, it's usually almost impossible to get this little thin piece of wicking material inside those grooves in one piece. So normally what I do is I cut two sections out, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to place this in the area where the hole is blocked off. So if you look, you can see through that hole all the way to the other side. This one is actually blocked off. So what you want to do is prevent the tank from over-wicking or overfeeding, which it could very easily do without having anything in place. So I'm simply going to take a piece, and I'm going to kind of eye it here, but I'm going to cut a little bit more off of this. And it's not really an exact science, but I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to drop it in there and try to push it into the same area so that you can see wick through that hole. Okay, and this came out of the atomizer. The easiest way to do this is with the aid of a dental pick. So hopefully you have one. If not, I recommend you pick one up. So this is probably the most tedious part of the rebuild process right here. And once you start to see it through that air hole, you can actually drag it down and into position. And as you can see now, it is pretty much in place there. So we're going to do that with the other side and then come back. Okay, so we have those little sheets of wicking material tucked back into the two holes that were previously blocked by the inside of these sleeves. So you can see we have two large holes that are completely unrestricted at this point. And now this is ready for the next step. So we've taken our coil. Again, I went ahead and I torched this coil. It's fairly thick wire, so you don't really need to worry about it too much. I'm going to go ahead and check to make sure that none of my coils are touching, so you might have to expand it a little bit. And it's not exactly springy wire, okay? Once you heat it up with the torch, it's going to be very soft and pliable. It's going to hold shape. So, but we're not too concerned with that at this point. The next step, you're going to take a sheet of Kogendo cotton or Japanese cotton, and in this case I've already pulled it apart, but I'm going to take even more off of this so that it's simply a very thin strip, because again we're going to be wrapping this around our coil several times, and I find it best to go ahead and get a piece that has that compressed outer layer, okay? And we can kind of see how wide our stock coils were, or our stock wick. So we're going to cut it to that width. So I'm simply going to take these thrum scissors And these things are great. You can pick them up for about $2 or $3. This is a very old pair that's still serving me well. And I'm going to cut my wick to size. Come on. And then I'm going to take this piece of wicking material. And I got a mess here already. And let me adjust my focus. I'm going to wet it. So I'm going to take my e-liquid, in this case Simply E-Juice's Luscious Lemonade, which is one of my favorites. And I'm just going to put a couple droplets of juice on this. And I want to make sure that it's wet, because it needs to stick to that coil. Just going to kind of work this in here until it almost turns translucent. So you can see it turning translucent as I dab that juice into the wick. Now at this point it'll become kind of sticky and pliable, which is what you want here. Doesn't seem like a lot of wicking material, does it? The next step is to take your coil and run a coiling rod through it. And this allows you to kind of keep the coil in a good shape here. Again, paying attention to the spacing. Want to make sure that the spacing is proper on this coil. And you might have to tweak it just a little bit. So there's our coil. And what we're going to do is take our wick and wrap our wick around it. Trying to keep the wick tight into this coil, as tight as possible. So apply pressure to it and wrap. That's why the coiling rod is essential at this point. As you can see, our top coil is not really tucked in there. So that we're just going to bring down on top of this once our wick is wrapped. So we have a thin piece of cotton, and we're going to take our top lead, wrap it down over the cotton like that. Okay. And again, central hull is unimpeded because that is where your airflow is coming from. So we need to make sure that. Now I leave the building rod in it, and at this point, let me clean up some of this mess. We're going to take our tube, and I like to slide these in from the top, but these leads are kind of sensitive at this point, so usually I've been sliding it in from the bottom. And paying attention to the way you twisted your wick, you're going to twist in the same direction, and at the same time twist the chimney with your other hand, and it should slide right into place. Again, I'm leaving my coiling rod in. I'm pushing this down. So if we look at this thing, let me adjust my focus again. Again, this is much faster to rebuild off camera. We can see that one of our leads is actually caught against the side there, which is what we want, because that lead is going to be trapped by our rubber grommet. So now we're going to take our rubber grommet, and again, you have to make sure that the central lead is inside. Okay. And we're simply going to push it into place. Like so. So now, what we have, this is a little bit deformed, but don't worry about that, because once we put the center pin in place, it should square right up. We're going to take our center pin, and we're going to push our center pin into place and use our center pin to actually push the coiling rod out of place. Okay. Like so. And going to take our coiling rod and push down and even out that coil in there. So even it out a little bit. We're going to take our screen and push it back in place. It's a fairly straightforward operation if I can get it, if I can pick it up with my sausage fingers. There we go. And for this, again, I'm using this tool, but I'm not using the point. I'm actually pushing from the side, pushing it down into place so that we have our spit back protection once again. There we go. So there is your rebuilt head. Again, you can see that there's a little gap in there. So this is actually going to feed higher VG juice much more efficiently than the old heads would. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and screw this into the base. And normally, because this is cotton, even though the cotton was wet, I usually like to drip a very small amount because you don't want it coming through the center hole, but I like to prime it just a little bit. So I'm just going to run a little bit of juice inside there. And take my tank. Screw it in. I believe I still have some juice in this. Yeah, okay. Let's bring it up top and see how it's vaping. .26 watts. Flavor, again, because I'm using the cotton again, I'm using the organic cotton. Of course, it's got a little bit of a break-in period. Normally that goes away after about 10 minutes of use for me. Again, I'm right on top of the camera, right on top of the microphone here, and as you can hear, no gurgling. No dry hits. And I've actually pushed these a little bit further than the stock Atlantis coils. I have brought these up to close to 50 watts with no issues. The design of the heads is really good. Again, maybe the only downside is that wicking material and the fact that it flakes off so easily. And, you know, that's kind of testament to the fact that these do wear out quickly. As you can see, that's almost a picture frame type wick. And that central area is burned out. Well, that material has got to have somewhere to go. So, performance is great. I know people don't like it when you blow plumes straight into the camera, so let's do a side shot. No problems chain vaping. I've left them overnight and no leaking. So this video went a little bit longer than I wanted it to. Again, once you get these little side pieces in place, rewicking the rest is very, very simple. If you leave them out, you will end up with a gurgly atomizer. So I wouldn't recommend that. Unless you're running like a really thick juice, like I do have some serial killer here, which is 9010. I haven't had too many problems using a head with no restricted juice flow holes, but with a typical VG blend of like an 80-20 or 70-30, I would recommend that you do slide those little pieces of wicking material back into place. Thanks for watching.